welcome back to Bookish Theories. In today's video, we'd like to talk about aespa SMCU Season 1 finale, focusing on a little breakdown and analysis of the story and how the video is connected to other idols in the SMCU. Now, episode 3, Girls Don't You Know I'm a Savage, is the final episode of the first season of the SM Culture universe. Like the song with the same title, Girls is an episode that focuses on the final showdown between aespa and the Black Mamba, but this finale gives us that and much more. If you guys are not caught up with the story so far, I have a whole playlist breaking down the entire lore, terminology and storyline up to this point, so without further ado, let's dive right in and see what's going on. Now, this season finale begins with some interesting insight about naevis' backstory. In the very first scene, the episode finally introduces us to KOSMO, which is the mysterious location beyond KWANGYA that was already mentioned in Next Level, but also in NCT U's 90s Love. When in KOSMO, we reunite with naevis, whom we see in a distant past while facing judgment in front of 3 cosmic entities. These celestial creatures call out naevis for her mistakes, and as they do so, we learn important information about her original purpose. According to the Celestials, naevis was supposed to destroy the seed of evil. Her task was to take the child of the prophecy and throw it away in KWANGYA, but naevis failed to dispose of the child, and this failure is considered a mortal sin. By the law of KOSMO, naevis is guilty of a terrible crime. Sparing the child is an unforgivable sin, so now she must face the consequences of what she did. Her first punishment is to lose all of her memories, which was also mentioned in the lyrics of Savage. Then she is banished from KWANGYA, forced to watch over it without ever getting involved, but while on trial, she's also given the task to protect the flat, which is the home of all the eyes. At the same time, however, naevis is also trapped in the place that she is supposed to protect, because in case she ever leaves the flat, she will lose all of her powers. As we'll see in a second, this is very much foreshadowing for what will happen later on, but before we get to that, let's take a second to digest all this information. For one, the fact that naevis is stuck in the flat actually explains why she needed aespa to go after the Black Mamba in KWANGYA. She's been banished from that location, so her only chance at protecting the flat and its inhabitants is for aespa to intervene and defeat the Black Mamba on her behalf. Even more importantly, however, this backstory gives us a lot more insight on the SMCU as a whole. While at this point we don't know much about the seed of evil and the child of prophecy, both of these terms might connect us to the worldview of the other artists in the multiverse. The concept of the seed of evil, for instance, actually reminded me of EXO's origin story, because in their lore, evil was created at the beginning of everything by the eye of the Red Force, which is also the main antagonist of their storyline. On top of that, in their cosmology, the powers created a Tree of Life whose heart was attacked by the Red Force, so maybe the seed of evil could be something connected to all of that. naevis saving the child of prophecy and running away in the deserts of KWANGYA, however, is actually very reminiscent of NCT's The Origin. In the video, we see a child living a solitary life in the desert, and fittingly enough, his only companion is a woman with dark hair wearing a dark cloak. While he draws his surroundings, the woman gives him a choice of 3 colors, and when the boy picks blue and starts drawing the sea in the desert, the woman seems very happy. Now, if that woman is naevis and the child is the child of the prophecy, it's possible that naevis went against the orders because she saw some goodness in the boy. If the child of prophecy was supposed to die for the seed of evil to be destroyed, maybe naevis decided to raise him under her care to make sure he wouldn't turn evil. In theory, naevis was right, because in the video we see that the child is able to imagine water in the desert. He can envision animals and vegetation, so he's a force of creation rather than destruction. Under the woman's protection, the child was growing well, but all of a sudden she was taken away by a sandstorm, which in hindsight might actually be the powers that be bringing her back to KOSMO to face trial. It's at this point that the child becomes vulnerable, because as he loses consciousness, the video ends with a snake approaching the boy. If you look closely, the snake is none other than a Black Mamba, so as you can see, some things are finally coming together. The entities responsible for taking naevis away are inadvertently guilty of fulfilling the very prophecy they were supposed to stop. If they let naevis raise the child, maybe would have been safe from the Black Mamba, but then again, as of right now, we have no idea how these two might be connected. As a matter of fact, we don't even know who the child of prophecy actually is, but at this point I think it's fair to say that it might be one of the members of NCT. To be completely honest with you, before this episode I always assumed that the child was Taeyong, because he's the leader, he's the first member to be introduced, and his dream also includes sand. While researching for this video, however, it has occurred to me that it was never actually officially confirmed, so much so that the identity of the child is debated to this day. This is because in some of their videos other members see the child in visions, and these visions might actually be flashbacks. The thing is that those visions are associated to the seventh sense, and in their lore the seventh sense refers to the ability to connect and interact with each other's dreams through music. Because of that, it's possible that even if other members see the child, they are not remembering their own past, but rather somebody else's. As of right now, the safest bet is still Taeyong, but if you have other theories about the identity of the child, let me know in the comments down below. In the meantime, however, it's finally time to get to aespa. Now, by the end of episode 2, the girls were able to escape the Black Mamba's hallucination quest with the help of naevis' butterfly, but the video ended with them still being trapped on the KWANGYA Express. The entity had taken over the train and eventually took human form right in front of aespa themselves, and in episode 3 we continue right where we left off. Their confrontation begins with Winter asking if the Black Mamba is indeed to blame for causing the sync out that disconnected people and Ice. Obviously guilty, the Mamba replies by killing naevis' butterfly and destroying the train with a single punch. As the girls plummet to KWANGYA, Ning activates Savage mode and their clothes immediately change into combat gear. This is the beginning of the final showdown, and the Mamba starts off by going after Karina, who in turn successfully avoids all of her attacks. When she throws a truck towards her, Karina seems to be in danger, but once again Ning comes through to save the day. Using her computer skills, she neutralizes the truck by transforming it into butterflies, so the Black Mamba goes after her next. When she starts throwing concrete pillars, however, Ning goes full Neo from the Matrix in order to avoid them, and speaking of the Matrix, at this point the battle seems to be inspired by that very movie. Like the scene of Agent Smith multiplying in order to catch Neo, the Black Mamba starts multiplying in order to catch aespa. As the clones attack Ning, Winter saves her with her skills as armamenter. Giselle fights them off, trapping them in glass, and Karina destroys them with the rocket punch. As much as the girls fight off the clones, however, the original Black Mamba doesn't seem to get hurt. In order to get more energy, the virus begins to absorb her surroundings, so much so that the buildings and roads of KWANGYA disappear into a desolated landscape. As the Mamba is about to strike again, Giselle traps her in the glass. Karina and Winter attack her with their weapons, but the enemy breaks free and injures them both. Over in the flat, naevis is powerless while she witnesses their defeat, but lucky for us, instead of killing them, the Black Mamba starts monologuing. Like any respectable supervillain about to win the fight, the Mamba takes her time to lay out her evil plan in front of the very people in charge of stopping it. In her victory monologue, the Black Mamba explains that she was created in KWANGYA by the desires of humans. As a manifestation of all the negativity that people spread on social media, the Black Mamba triggered the sync out in order to protect KWANGYA and the Ice from the very people that created them. In order to accomplish this task and prove that they can indeed exist without humans, the Black Mamba learned to copy their behavior. She saw all the rumors, the deepfakes, the impersonations, the hate comments. She saw how much pain they caused and decided to use them against humans in order to avenge KWANGYA and the Ice. This is because, according to her, people think that Ice are disposable. They don't perceive them as living entities with their own consciousness. And to be fair, she has a point, because in the hallucination quest, Karina was about to delete Karina from existence. What the Mamba forgot to mention is that she was the one pushing her to do it, but then again she's a computer snake who hates humans so much that she transformed into one, so I would say the logic is not her stronger asset. What is her stronger asset, however, is that infinity stone looking thing that she has planted on her palm. Considering what we saw back in Girls, I would say that the stone might be the main source of her power, and at this point she's about to use it to obliterate Karina once and for all. This is our lucky day though, because as it turns out, she monologued long enough for naevis to come all the way from the flat to save the day, so instead of hurting Karina, it's naevis the one hurting Black Mamba. Even if naevis was banished from KWANGYA, she broke the law yet again in order to save her friends, and this makes the Black Mamba extremely mad. With the arrival of naevis, the stakes grow even more, so the Mamba decides to harness even more power from KWANGYA. Her need for energy also reaches the real world, to the point that phones stop working, and we also see blackouts happening everywhere. As the real world is being affected, over in KWANGYA, the Black Mamba abandons her human form to transform into a giant giant snake with many heads. Winter tries to cut them off, but like an hydra, the Black Mamba always regenerates itself by absorbing data. This regenerative power was already foreshadowed in the lyrics of Savage, and as we see in a second, so did the weakness that would cause her downfall. While Ning is overviewing the situation, Giselle notices that the screen is full of city names. Thanks to this information, Ning is able to figure out the algorithm that the Black Mamba is using, and as it was hinted in Savage, the algorithm is her weakness. Understanding what they have to do in order to stop the snake, Ning and Giselle decide that it's time to involve ED. Now if you remember, Ning is an ED hacker, but until recently it was unclear what those letters actually stood for. Thanks to aespa's collaboration with the game Epic 7, however, we discovered that ED actually stands for Exif Detective, which is the hacker group that Ning is actually a part of. Needing the help of the other members of this group, Giselle and Ning ask naevis to interrupt the sync dive and allow their consciousness to go back to reality, so from this moment on the action is divided between KWANGYA and the real world. Over in KWANGYA we have Karina, Winter, naevis, Giselle and Ning, and they're the ones in charge of the physical fight against the Black Mamba. Over in the real world instead we have Ning and Giselle, who in turn are the brains of the operation and need to join forces with the ED hackers. So this is how it goes. Ning basically figured out that the Black Mamba is regenerating by absorbing data. This data is being acquired through IP addresses spread all over the world, so the cities that Giselle noticed before are all the access points that the Mamba is using to get energy. What Ning wants her friends to do is to divert the flow of data away from the IP addresses. In that way, the Mamba will no longer have access to the data she needs to regenerate itself, thus allowing the others to kill it once and for all. The problem is that too much data is being generated at the same time, so as much as they try, the ED hackers cannot keep up. Over in KWANGYA, the others keep on fighting, but it's pretty evident that the Black Mamba is having the upper hand. This is until Giselle has another idea. Since cutting the flow of data isn't working, Giselle proposes to do the opposite and actually flood it with data. In simple words, instead of starving it, she wants to overfeed it, so Ning directs the others to send the data over to her instead of stopping it. By feeding the Black Mamba a huge amount of data all at the same time and from the same place, they basically want to trigger a buffer overflow. This happens when a program tries to read more data than the storage can hold. It's a bug that can weaken the security of the entire system, so in the case of the Black Mamba, it would make it vulnerable enough for the others to kill. For all of this to work, however, everyone has to do their part. First of all, the ED hackers need to send Ning at least an exabyte of data, which for reference is about 1 billion gigabytes of information. After that, Ning has to send it to Ning over in KWANGYA, and at that point, the Eye has to attack the Black Mamba with the data that she was given. After overcoming their doubts and hesitation, everyone fulfills their task, and the operation is eventually successful. Black Mamba is badly injured by this overflow, and at this point, it's too weak to regenerate. This is the moment that Giselle traps her in the glass. Winter then attacks her with both of her weapons, and Karina punches her in the face like she deserves. At the end, however, it's naevis who delivers the final blow. Since she is the one who opens the doors, she uses her powers to open a portal into oblivion, and as the Black Mamba falls into it, the stone separates from her palm and falls on the ground. When the door closes, the Black Mamba disappears for good. The battle is won, but naevis has fallen, sacrificing herself in order to save KWANGYA. This seems to be the end for naevis, but it's actually very far from it, because in the post-credit scene we discover more about her fate. Back in KOSMO, the Celestials are mad at naevis for disobeying yet again, but instead of facing another punishment, this time she has other plans. After saving aespa, the eyes, and KWANGYA itself, she doesn't want to go back to the flat, but rather she wants to go to the real world. Considering that she appeared in aespa's Sync Hyperline, I think that naevis is getting ready for her upcoming debut, but in the meantime, let's see what happened to the girls. Sometime after the Battle of KWANGYA, things are seemingly back to normal. The connection between people and eyes was successfully re-established, and aespa and their minds are back spending time together like before. During her presentation at university, Giselle references the lecture from episode 1 about existentialism. In discussing this concept applied to the eyes, Giselle explains that they are indeed the new evote that was mentioned in Next Level. Well created by the information that people upload on social media, eyes are a new type of existence that must be recognized as independent from their creators. Even if they're virtual counterparts of their humans, they have their own consciousness. They think, and therefore they exist. So by the end, humans and ice seem to have learned to coexist after all. If in the real world aespa seemingly brought a happy ending, however, the mysteries of the SMCU have just begun. Somewhere in the universe, BoA makes a surprise cameo approaching the petrified remains of the Black Mamba. Noticing that the stone in her hand is missing, BoA looks on as the statue of the creature breaks apart. As this happens, BoA's body turns red, and right behind her we see rings of energy lighting up and ending the video with a blast. Now this mysterious scene is very interesting here, because even if for now we don't really know what's going on, the visuals seem to reference BoA's camo. Back in that song, the lyrics talked about her ability to camouflage, which may or may not have something to do with their role in the SMCU. So far we know that BoA is connected to the birth of the universe itself, but to know more about what's in store we'll have to wait and see. In the meantime, however, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you did, please think about liking and subscribing. As always, thank you so much for watching, guys. I'll see you next time. Bye bye.